Hi, I'm Kevin Lee with the eMarketing Association. My day job is I also run Did It, a digital ad agency with about 85 people. We also do traditional. And I have a nonprofit that I run, a cause marketing based nonprofit called Giving Forward. I'm here with Adam Katz, who is one of the executive teams at Sightly. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about Adam first and then about Sightly. So to start off with, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Sightly and how you ended up on the team?
Yeah, of course. So back in, now about 7 years ago, the original investor in Sightly actually reached out to me while I was at one of his other companies, asking me if I would want to advise the team here at Sightly when it was a pretty small team. And I was very young and I was honored by even the opportunity. So I got a chance to talk to the CEO of the company at the time, and he put me on the advisory board, not really knowing that they were setting me up to be at the company. Within a couple of months, I took a job to open up our New York office back in January of 2015. It was just me in my apartment, and now, to me, we're like an empire. I'm sure you understand running your own company with 85 people. You're probably like 85 is a lot when it was just you, right? So it's all relative to the size of the team and the size of the company. And, I've had the privilege of pretty much being here since the early days. And we've hired people now all over the country over the last couple of years. And we're, trending towards close to 70 people right now and growing. So it's been a really cool run for me. And I came in as an individual contributor in the sales organization and, rose throughout the time I've been here because of the people in the company believing in me, not me, believing in myself. It's been, awesome riding that wave. And last year, obviously came up with a big idea that we're going to talk about today that is, catapulting the company in a much better place than it's ever been before. So it's pretty exciting, and I appreciate you having me on.
Cool. Well, it's actually great to hear a story about a person going from advisor to sort of an active role in the company, and then continuing to ladder up within the company, because some people like, oh, those advisory roles are useless. But you demonstrate that you can actually provide value as an advisor and then continue to add value as the company grows. So that's very cool to hear.
Yeah, I think the reason that a lot of people say that about advisory roles is because a lot of the time they just give you that because they want your name to be able to get something done, versus the reality of what you should do as an advisor. And then on the flip side, a lot of advisors don't actually want to do any work. So you have both sides of the situation where like the advisor's just taking the thing to put it on their resume. And then you have the other side of it where the company is not really interested in your opinion. They want to just use your name. So I think that's probably why you're saying that. But I'm one of those people that if I'm going to do something, I'm going to be involved. So like it would be hard for me to take a role where I wasn't helping. And then it also, is hard for me to take an advisory role if I'm not contributing. So I think that would be my statement to your thought process there.
I think it's a lesson for other people to share that if you're going to take an advisory role, first find out if they really want your help, and then be willing to do the work, right? So it's great to see that that there was a win-win from both sides. They wanted you to do the work, and you wanted to do the work.
Absolutely. So it's been a great run.
Yeah. So what do you see as some problems that marketers face that Sightly is helping them solve these days? Clearly there was a catalyst that happened at some point where you felt like, okay, we can go in here and solve some problems.
I mean, I feel bad for marketers a lot of the time because the problems are that they're always asked to walk them to water and make them drink it, which is not fair. I feel like marketers are typically the scapegoat for a negative downturn in an organization, and they're never given the reward when they're the reason it's happening. So I think marketers are just challenged in general for that reason. And typically marketers in the C-suite have like the shortest tenure of any role because it's hard to always see that impact. But I think last year made it glaring, right? Like everyone obviously we know what happened last year, unfortunately, with COVID, and there was so many things going on around social movements and different things that are going on in this world right now. And the speed at which things are moving today is pretty hard for anyone to keep up with. It's hard to be as nimble as you want, right? A lot of metrics for executive teams are starting to change based on mission-based metrics versus just purchase intent and reach and consideration, right? Like you're starting to see a lot of the metrics in executive teams be focused on things like, what you're doing for diversity or what you're doing to impact society or how you're taking stances. So marketers are being thrown so many different challenges than ever before. And I think, also, especially in the world we play in a lot, which are these crazy, fast moving UGC platforms, which there's just so much content and so much chatter at all times, right? That keeping up with what you believe your brand is and how you want to market in these places is extremely difficult. So I think, I could go on about this question for a long time, but I feel for marketers when they're in the boat that they're in, right? Because of what I said in the beginning. But, Sightly's in a position now where we feel we can help with a lot of those problems that are out there. For years, our company was very focused on like supply chain transparency, outcomes, helping people with being able to go to market on these big platforms and being able to solve those challenges. So we were doing that for a lot of years. And then last year, we really came up with a new concept that we feel is going to solve the problems I'm talking about now. And it doesn't interrupt our company, which is beautiful. As startups pivot and think and are always trying to find the best place to take themselves. And I think at this point, what's really cool is people like yourself are reaching out to talk, and because of the new concept that we have. So it's just been a cool run that we're parlaying what we've been doing over the years. And now with the marketing challenges out there, we think we have kind of a combination to solve those things.
Cool. Well, I took a look at your site earlier, and it seems like you're very hyper-focused on video. So, what was sort of the catalyst to really double down on video as the area of focus?
I think we are very focused on video on our site, but we also play in pretty much any outcome-based media or media type that a client leads us towards. I wouldn't say that we'll buy anything, but a lot of the time our platform, our brand mentality platform, which I'm sure we'll talk about, is leading our customers to want us to do other things, right? Like we have a customer just asked us, buy this, buy that. And the reason for it is they want to leverage our expertise, our data, and our thought process on top of multiple platforms. So we have to think a lot about what platforms we get into and what we don't based on, what's best for the company. But in general, video has been our leading practice. And the reason I mean, it's hard not to like video for the obvious reasons that, you could tell a cool message. It's easier. Look at us right now where, you can really feel somebody's empathy and how much they care about something. And you could tell a great story, right? But on top of that, everyone's consuming video now everywhere, right? Like if you were to ask me the question like 7 years ago, why video? It's like, because we think it's the next hot thing. Right now, if you're not in video, I mean, I feel like it's, not to say it's a bad question, but it's like you have to be there. Like, so it's just it's a little bit of a different situation than it was in the past.
Cool. Well, there's no doubt that having worked ages ago, almost 30 years ago in traditional Madison Avenue, people always loved TV spots because you could sort of tell the story and hit the emotional triggers. And I think in the digital world for many years, we didn't really have that. We didn't have the luxury of being able to tell stories and elicit emotional responses. So, I'd love to hear sort of this invention that you alluded to earlier, the brand mentality concept, where the idea came from, and how that dovetails into what you do for clients.
I'll answer that question in 1 second. I just want to make a comment to something you just said. Like the TV world, it's always was funny to me when I got into digital, like how digital was graded in an unfair way while TV was allowed to just get graded on reach.
Yeah.
So the reality is I feel like digital, just because there was data there, it's like everything has to work perfectly. And so most people focused on the metrics that proves obviously purchase because you could see that finally.
Right.
But the reality is you got to build a brand, and a brand perception today is more important than ever before, right? Like people are buying things based on their emotions about a situation that is going on more than ever before, right? So that leads into your question. So basically, I've told this story on other podcasts and things. So like, I'm not going to tell the whole story again, just because it's a long one. But what I'll do is I'll give you kind of the gist. So basically, you know, we had been dealing a lot with brand suitability and brand safety, obviously, when you play on YouTube and you play on these big platforms. And it's always been just about risk. Like that's like everyone always wants to talk about how do I protect myself. And what happened was I thought that a lot of people were missing out on opportunity for a long time. So that was the first thing that had popped up into my mind, that everyone was so focused on risk, there's no focus on opportunity. I'm not saying we don't care about risk, but there's two sides to every coin. And I think that a lot of people were going all in on risk and not seeing that the beauty of so many opportunities that were out there. The second thing that happened was we started to recognize that speed is everything right now, right? With COVID, like the brands that were able to get to market really quickly, like a Burger King, they got to market really quickly because they knew who they were and they were ready for the creative. Like people, we saw how fast you need to be able to think and move, right? As I was saying earlier. And then on top of that, we were starting to realize that people were starting to buy things based on the way brands act and the way they feel more than ever before. Like when we were kids, you didn't talk politics at work. That's all anyone talks about now. You didn't talk about, right, like what's going on in your personal life. Like everybody is so interconnected and consumed now, right? So what happened was I had been toying around in my head with a lot of these thoughts, like, and getting frustrated by some of the things that were going on in the industry. Like when people would say to me, run on sports, and I'd run on the UFC and they'd go, but that's a violent sport. And I'm like, but you just said run on sports. So you have to actually really understand and break down categorization and who you are to be able to do marketing today, in my belief. So what happened was Kobe Bryant dies last year, and I'm a big sports fan. And I started to read a lot about the concept called the Mamba mentality. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it was the concept that he lived by. And the reason that he lived by it was when he had some issues back in the 90s and early 2000s, he tried to figure out a way to rewrite himself and become something different. And by the time he died, he was revered. And you don't hear anything about that. And I was like, that's a crazy concept. And I started to read about the Mamba mentality concept. And I just had a daughter. She's 4 months old, Sophie. And I was reading about how he became #girldad and like all these things that had made him this guy that now is revered. And he dies, and I'm a big sports fan. So I was like, I like this concept. So I started to see if brand mentality could be a thing, right? I was like, can this be a thing? Because I believe that to be able to do safety and suitability and to be able to market today, you have to know who you are. So like the old school concept of like brand values and things like that, to me, you got to know them. And so we were like, how can we solve this problem, right? Like it's a big problem to solve. So I reached out to a couple people in the company and I said, what do you guys think about brand mentality? You think it's catchy? They're like, yeah, I think people would pick up on this new categorization very, very quickly. So we started pushing it into market. And the way we were looking to solve it was we put together a profile that lets brands talk about who they think they are, what they believe in, who are their aspirational brands, right? What do they believe different content categories should be called? How should they be looked at? Not the way the industry says they are, but what do they believe? And then we start to think about scenario planning and how we could connect all this to AI, machine learning, and natural language processing. And then one of the biggest things that we heard when we were going to market was there's a lot of great companies watching the world, but none of them could connect it to execution. And then we were hearing there's a lot of companies that could profile what somebody is, but they can't figure out the sentiment in real time to what's going on. So I was like, if we can connect what's going on, what you believe, and where you want to react all in one platform, we have the holy grail. And that's what we're doing. So that's how this concept came about. That's what we're trying to do. And it's been a lot of fun. So it's a lot, right? And we're, but being hard is the coolest part about it, right? So our team is so rallied around it, right? As we've been going to market, brands and agencies and platforms, I hear the word "that's unique" all the time. And in ad tech and martech, to hear the word "that's unique" is like impossible, right? So people are like, "That's unique, that's different, that's cool. How do we use that?" Right? Like, so we're getting the questions that are so cool and innovative versus just the status quo of how do you solve this problem. So it's been a lot of fun.
Cool. Well, you mentioned speed and agility a couple of times earlier, and I've always been a fan of sort of agile-based marketing. It has to do with our paid media practice having originated in search, where you're doing real-time bidding before there was even programmatic display. And so, agility and speed were sort of part of our DNA. So I'm totally with you on that. But, certainly now the landscape itself is also changing super fast as to sort of what's going viral, sort of meta trends and memes and everything going on around the swirling around the brand, right? So it seems like the speed isn't just sort of, isn't just the brand having to be fast in a status quo environment, but they have to deal with an ever-changing environment. Is that part of what the driver was for you guys, saying that speed and agility is important for what you're doing?
Yeah, because if you think about it this way, I'll give you a great example, right? If Tiger Woods, when he got in his car accident, the first reaction was like, did he die? Did he do drugs? Was he cheating again? Like all those things is he going to play golf ever again, right? And then 2 days later, the news changes to the Genesis car saved his life. If you're an auto brand, now you want in that conversation. You didn't want it in the conversation the first 2 days. How do you tell somebody that that's what you want to do, right? Another example is like an aspirational brand. For Sightly, an aspirational brand for us is Bumble. And you're like, why? That's a dating app. Well, we believe that more women belong in leadership than they are today. And Bumble's CEO is one of the great women entrepreneurs of all time. So if Sightly's marketing about their brand, I want to be on her content. And there's nowhere in a DSP to click aspirational brands. And when you think about it, also, like, people care about causes today. They care about one cause versus another. And if you're not consistent, you're going to get called out, right? And if you're not understanding those things up front, you can't really market today. And then on top of that, like I was saying with speed, think about it this way. If let's just, I don't know if you're a golf fan, but let's just say when Rory McIlroy wins a golf tournament, people are always like, can you get us on new videos on YouTube, on TikTok, or whatever it is around Rory? I'm like, people are now watching his videos in 2013 again. Mm-hmm. Those are just as important, but I don't know that you care about that unless you answer our profile the way we're asking those questions. And I can't determine that with speed unless I know your sentiment about these situations. So the way I see it is those connection points is what's going to solve the problem, right? No, all the three lanes that we're helping, unless you bring them in one place, you can't solve any of these. That's how I perceive it, and I think that's what makes the beauty of it. You said search, right? Obviously, search is an easy place to move fast. But let's be real. If a brand doesn't tell you that they're okay when a political leader is divisive and I want to have to go after that brand, how would you know to do that? Because that's not what you're typically bidding on, right? So you need to understand what a brand thinks in all these buckets to really be able to advertise and take customer bases. It's a different game, right? If you have let's just use an example going on right now. I'm personally Jewish, and there's a lot going on right now, unfortunately, in the country with anti-Semitism. I have no knowledge of the Israel-Palestinian situation enough to speak to it. But what I do know is if a brand says something very negative about the American situation where people are just walking up to Jews and punching them in the face, I'm not buying that brand anymore. So the truth of the matter is, think about how complex that is now for marketers. They have to be thinking now in all these lanes, right? So it's a very tough situation. And my mentality is you could say whatever you want until it gets there. That's kind of so I'm explaining the way the mentality concept really works is people have their thresholds for when they make their action. And we want to be able to determine that for brands in real time. And I think that that's why speed and nimbleness is everything. I also think, not to run on too long about this, is that all these upfronts and all the buying, the way TV was, as you know, and having your money locked in, last year was proven that's not the right approach, right? So if you can do real-time marketing, like I think this is going to become, but you can do that on UGC platforms. You could do it on search. You could do it on these places because they scale so fast. So wouldn't you rather be able to use your money that way than have it stuck already? Right? So my belief is that the whole game's about to change over time. So I think it's going to be hard because a lot of the legacy marketers are still waiting. But I think you'll see everybody flipping to this type of thought process, where the platform everybody uses to do it or not is up for debate, right? Like that's the debate. I don't think there's a debate that this is going there, right? So that's the way I see it.
Cool. Well, actually, my first book, which I wrote in 2007, predicted that would be where we would end up. It's taking a lot longer to get there. I basically said all media will become sort of real-time bidded media. There'll be somewhat of an advanced market, but it's taken a long time because marketers, they want to have the comfort level of knowing things are locked in. They want to know exactly what kind of reach, frequency, and GRPs are going to hit for X budget, right? And so there's a bit of a tug of war going on there. But my next question is really about sort of speed and nimbleness as it relates to creative, right? So in search, which is where we started, changing out creative was super easy. Like didn't require an art director or anything. You could change out your ad copy. And then, we got into programmatic display and social, and it was a little bit harder, but still not too hard to go out and change creative to take advantage of speed and nimbleness and agile marketing. Once you move into video, it gets a little bit more complicated to be nimble and fast in coming up with new ad creative. So do you recommend that clients and their agencies, marketers and their agencies also try to add that layer of speed to the creative process, not just to the buying process?
Hell yeah. I mean, I've given you a lot of long answers. Hell yeah. I mean, all right, but it's hard, right? That's another hard thing. But I saw the other day, like TikTok's pushing hard, make TikToks not creatives, right? Like, I don't know if that's the right way they're saying it, but they're basically saying you should make TikToks not creative anymore. I agree with them. I think the truth of the matter is you have to be thinking the type of audience that's watching in the situation they're in.
Right.
And when you think about it, like we're on YouTube, they were brilliant to create the skippable ad unit. Why? Because people lose attention, right? So I think the reality is it's going to get there. So it's an impossible question truly to answer, like, because my brain is much more math driven, right? I think there's two sides to every person. I'm more of the math person than the writer. So creative gives me anxiety. So I'm not the greatest person to educate people on that, but because like it's not where my brain goes. So I could give you much smarter people to how to do it. But I would say absolutely it's a massive, massive place that they're going to have to do. But I think you'll see so many technologies tackle that. We do a good job of personalization. We do, creative chop downs and different cool things. But do I think we'll have to go that route at some point? I'm sure. But I think there's platforms that are trying to solve that I respect. And I think that our platform with a platform like those are just unbelievable synergies, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a phenomenal question, but it's just so hard to answer other than absolutely.
Right. Cool. Well, are there any other channels and platforms that sort of have you excited as sort of, or do that you highly recommend that brands use to reach consumers? Like obviously you want to be where the eyeballs are depending on your target market, but are there certain channels or platforms that have you particularly excited at the moment?
TikTok's awesome. For me, I think it's awesome because it's just so unique, right? It's a place where people can be their own person and their own personality. So I think that's unique, but I think that makes it a challenge for a brand even more. YouTube's obviously going to always be super cool, right? I've been on YouTube as a partner for years. And, not to just be a homer, I love what they do because it's a library of just anything you've ever wanted to see ever. I mean,
Yeah.
so the truth of the matter is I think YouTube is going to always be a massive place. I'm a big fan of Instagram ads, even though we don't buy them heavily. I'm not a fan of Facebook ads. So I would say that, TikTok's really cool. Amazon's doing some cool stuff, right? Obviously, because they're always near the purchase part of the funnel, but they're doing it in a way that they're buying up the market to have cool video, right? So they're out there buying everything. So obviously you got to pay attention to what they're doing. And then I think live sports, VOD, OTT, CTV, and then also esports is the big places. I think everyone should be buying in esports and gaming personally, because I think that those are the most leaned in, obsessive type of fan. And what brands need is to create loyalty and people that, continue to come back for more. So I think people should be advertising on the platforms where loyalty and, I don't want to use the word addictive is right, because I think it's bad how addicted people get to these things. I don't even have a Twitter, so I'm not that person. But I would say that where people are overly addicted and engaged, they're probably the right platform. So I think esports, live streaming, like I said, and all of these different things. So that would be my answer to that.
And I read that you guys are part of the YouTube measurement platform. I guess that's a sort of not that many companies have access to that data. So what kind of an advantage does that data give to you guys?
I mean, I wouldn't say that it's an advantage, because I think that's an unfair word, because it's all about the way you utilize it, right? Like, it's a public API. We just have enterprise level access. So it's a little bit of a different, I respect that YouTube lets that data be out there for people. In terms of the advantage that it gives us, I mean, it's endless, right? Like, we have the ability to connect what's viral to individual videos, right? How fast is that, right? Think about search, that's speed. We have the ability to look at what's going viral quicker than anything else, what's being viewed quicker than anything else, what languages, what content's being created, what are new cool buckets, right? I mean, there's so many advantages to having cool data like that. But I think it's awesome that YouTube and Google has made that accessible to partners that they trust. So I appreciate that a lot. So I give them a lot of credit for doing that, because it's not always easy to let other platforms play with your data, right? So, but I will say the advantages are endless. I mean, but it all ties into the stuff that we're doing.
Cool. Do you have a few examples of sort of brand mentality at work or case studies that you could share?
Yeah, absolutely. So some I can name the brand because they've allowed me to, and some I can't, right? So I'll give you the start of a brand that is out there with this, right? So Vita Coco, for example, worked with us on our brand mentality platform. They were an early adopter. And I have a lot of respect for them because they know who they are, which makes their marketing be able to move really, really nimble and fast, right? And that's why I keep saying knowing who you are is a big advantage to being able to move fast. So what happened was with them, they told us one of the influencers that they have a lot of appreciation for is Lizzo. And Lizzo had picked up a viral trend that we had picked up on our platform on TikTok called Nature Cereal, and she had made her own. So because of the answers in the platform and our technology, we were able to pick up the trend, and Vita Coco was great at having TikToks available. We were able to react right away, and the results were staggering. But outside of the results being staggering, the coolest part about it was what the consumers were writing. Consumers were writing, wow, you guys are quick with marketing. Wow, like consumers were talking about the marketing speed, which I thought was the coolest case study ever to see consumers say that, right? Like, that's not typically consumers like marketing's annoying. Get your video out of here. Like, I want to get rid of advertising, like all those. It was the opposite. They were so inspired by the way Vita Coco was able to react fast to the right situation. And that all was tied into our platform. Another great example that I love is we were talking the other day to one of the biggest QSRs direct. And our agency partner had set us up to talk to them, which was great. And you know, when agencies are bringing you to the brand direct, it's a cool thing that you're doing, right? So they brought us to one of the biggest QSRs, one of the QSRs that's involved in the chicken wars all the time. I'm not going to name who it is, but it's one of those. And they were looking at our platform and they were like, let's separate out alcohol and tobacco targeting. And I was like, that's really smart, right? So and our platform's so dynamic that we could just easily move content categories because of the way the platform's built. So they gave us that piece of feedback. We separated it out. And now we're able to look at late night targeting around different things inside of those two buckets that are driving results. So I just think that was a cool case study. Another really cool one was we work with a pizza brand. And every day is a national something day, which people don't realize, right? And on National Pizza Day, we were able to lean in for that brand because our platform picked up that was what was happening in the world. They had told us that they want to lean in on events that fit their persona, and we leaned in, and the results were cool. So, like, you continue to see those kind of things as what the platform does continuously. Another case study that's every day for us, right? There's a gray area in brand suitability and safety. So you can come into our platform and tell us what you believe a content bucket is to you. And then you could tell us if that content bucket matters to you. So, like, for example, most platforms grade art and literature and body art as the same thing. They're not the same thing. Art and literature could be like a Michelangelo thing, and then you could have body art, which is tattoos. So most platforms grade them as the same. We've separated them. And it's been really cool to see the debate around that topic and then watching the way brands will change their answer in the platform to lean into things that they had always thought was just risk. So it's those things are happening endless, like all the time. So I could go on and on about case studies, but the cool part about it is we're literally establishing 50 to 75 new case studies a day, right? That's how fast we're seeing things happen in the way we're reacting to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's great the way you sort of packaged up brand mentality. I've certainly chatted with both from pitching them and prior clients who haven't even figured out what their brand voice is yet, right? And so when you try to overlay social into them and you're trying to make it authentic, they don't even know what authentic is to them because they haven't even figured out their own brand voice. And I think your process forces the brands to not even get to their own brand voice, but it takes them even beyond that, right, to their brand persona, to really understanding sort of how do they interact with the broader world, the broader ecosystem, so that your platform can take advantage of it, right? So
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I also think, to your point, it's because a lot of the time creating these things didn't allow them to have an impact. So if you look at all the years that brand voice and all these things are talked about, I think a lot of brands know what they are more than I thought going in. So that's been really cool. But I also think because the world's changed where these conversations happen more and more. And I think that's a beautiful thing that people now at work actually talk about things that are like this. So they have to know their brand voice. But then on top of that, there was never a way to utilize all of it, right? When you really think about it, you could have a brief, you could go through it, but then you got to look at an MRI tool, then you got to look at ComScore, then you got to look at Nielsen. And it's like, by the time you make a decision, your voice might have changed already, or something else might have happened that changed your mentality, the way you're going to do something. So what's really cool about what we're doing, not to keep harping on it, is that you can dynamically change it at any time you want, right? So you can come in and take out Bumble, right? The Bumble CEO gets in trouble, which I hope doesn't happen. They're not an aspirational brand for us anymore. You can come in and you can change who your competitors are anytime you want, right? You can come into our platform and change your opinion on a type of content. We've had so many debates where people change their opinion on content. Our scenario section in our platform, hopefully we won't have COVID questions anymore, right? Like let's hope that over the next couple of months, COVID goes away. Let's use the vaccine as a really good example, right? You have some of the biggest stars in the world being asked if they take the vaccine and answering, saying, I don't want to answer that question. You don't think that has an impact on people getting the vaccine? Those exact same stars are who people are advertising on tonight. So maybe you want to separate that star that way. And our platform could do that. You could tell me that I don't want to advertise on this person when they're talking about that, but I want to be on this person when they're talking about this. And the problem has always been that you blanket look at everything. So as a brand voice, as you're calling it, brand mentality, whatever way you want to describe it, you always had to have it as a blanket thing. Now you can actually dissect these things. So from my perspective, I think brands are going to lean into this more as they see the availability to do it. And then you also have to think about the service element. Our team is like, this is hard to do, right? So like, think about when we walk into places, they're like, we got to think a lot about, we got to change. We got to not be complacent, right? We don't want to lead. We got to actually work till 9. Like, so you got to think about also what we're bringing to the table. We're bringing the ability to keep moving all the time. And that interrupts a lot of like the RFP typical process that this industry has been created by, right? Like, it's like, here's what we're going to do. Well, the world's changing every day. So it's like, how do you keep up with it and how do you do that? So I think you're 100% right. It's just, I think if you can give marketers or people, even yourself or anyone, the ability to do it, they might think about these things differently. That's kind of been my perspective. And you're starting to see that evolution as we go to market.
Cool. Final question, and it's just out of curiosity. You don't have to name any names, but has anyone sort of flipped the script upside down and basically said, hey, all that stuff that everyone else thinks is brand unsafe, I'm sure it's cheaper and it still reaches my audience. I want to buy that. And I'm going to come up with messaging and I'm going to actually be there where other people are afraid to be.
The answer is absolutely, but I'm going to give you the nuance. Our platform is built on top of, IAB and GARM. I don't know if you're familiar with GARM, the Global Alliance for Responsible Media. I don't want to advertise on certain topics as a company because it's wrong, right? So the answer is yes, but within the limitations of what's wrong. Like, yeah. We're not gonna allow a brand, right, to be advertising on a child dying. Like, that's disturbing. Like, so there's a limitation. So let me just and then I'll answer your question. So it starts with the ground floor, right? We're not going outside of what's we're not cool with, right? Then the answer is yes. There's so many brands that, like, think about like Joe Rogan as an example, right? Like, he came out and was talking about different things when it comes to the vaccine. A brand may want to lean into that type of comment. If they do, we have not done that, I'm saying, but they might. But on the flip side, think about like things like last year with the BLM movement. Everybody was blocking everything.
Yeah.
Because they were blanket looking at that situation. That's wrong. There's so many inspirational things going on that people want to be around, right? Like, and when you think about it, that's not good. Think about the concept of death, as screwed up as it is. When Alex Trebek passes away, it's different than Kobe, right? The way Kobe died is very different than what happened with Alex Trebek. Alex Trebek fought an amazing battle against cancer, and he was beautiful the way he handled himself. And people want to be around, that conversation with him. Whereas Kobe, no one wants to be around what happened there, yeah. Right? But think about how that flips. So I would say that brands are leaning into things that I wouldn't use the word cheaper, like, because, yeah, it could be more efficient because no one else is bidding on it.
Right.
But to that brand, it's premium because it's a moment that they process as good. Like, another example is, we just had the 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre, which was horrible. What happened? You think anything you're going to advertise around that is going to be nice? Like, it's going to be not that it's controversial. There's going to be things that, people. It's deep. It's emotional. It's things that are upsetting. Like, think about what's going on right now, where a lot of the Holocaust talk is coming back because of what's going on. Like, if you're around that stuff, it's not going to be things that are easy to see, but there's brands that want to have a message there because that's their consumer, and they appreciate that consumer is educating themselves on things that have happened. So I think there's different scenarios, right? You also have to think about, like, obviously there's the cancel culture going on, right? And that's, I'm not a big believer in it because I think people deserve chances. But in the end, there's a joke now called the cancel culture, SELL, because people are buying things off the shelves and people are getting canceled, right? Like, if like a baseball player gets canceled, everyone wants the card. right? If you think about it, look at right now, baseball cards are like going for millions of dollars. I'm trying to like find them in my trunks, like from back in the day, right? Or Pokemon cards are going big. And the ones that are going for the most money is like Kobe who had an issue or somebody else. So like people want it, like the opposite effect a lot of the time happens when things happen. So I would say that that's the way to think about what's happening. It's not that we're never going to do something that is something Sightly doesn't believe in. Like we have our own brand mentality. And if you come to me and say you want to advertise on something that is just dead wrong, we could get to it, but I'm never doing it. Right. So that's kind of the way I would draw the line. It's that there's very controversial things that are out there that shouldn't always just be blocked.
Sure.
There's moments where brands can jump on things, but there's things that I don't care. If you come to me from a moral compass and from a business standpoint, our company will not do that. Right. So I think I just want to make that, distinction as we're thinking through, the difference between how to be nimble, speed, and take advantage of what you said, which is efficiency. There's a difference between efficiency and wrong, right? So that blurred line is important.
I was really more, making the point that the way filtering is done now at the keyword level often ends up throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? It seems like there might be opportunities there, especially for some brands, where, as you said, that as long as the content is not objectionable, right? But it's in a hot area, there might be opportunities if everyone else is sort of using a blunt force filtering method, right, and not really thinking the nuances of it. You could sort of jump in there and take advantage of that.
Think about that concept so much. It's like it's such a scary thing to always be blanket at this current state. I mean, how could you be anymore? That's the whole concept we're thinking, is that we think brands deserve the right to put their opinion in market as fast as they want. We think that brands have the right to control what they believe a piece of content really is to them, right? And we believe that brands deserve the right to be able to move in and out as they see fit, right? And you just can't do that unless you know who you are. Like I always say this, as you get to know friends more and more, right? Material things become less important to them as like sentimental or personalized gifts, or things that are much more like, if I get to know you, like, and I send you a book in the mail that you like to read, you're probably going to appreciate that more than a check that I send you, because you're like, oh, that's really nice. Like, you get me.
Yeah.
And our platform, we are starting to see, is starting to go, I get you. Right. Like, and that's when it starts to get even more fun, because it's like we're making recommendations to people that they're like, we didn't even think about that recommendation.
Yeah.
And now
the consumers are starting to say, you get us, right? Because they're writing back. They're saying, well, that was pretty cool.
But then there's going to be the consumers that are going to say, what the hell are you doing? Right. So you always have to, and that's a mentality thing. Can a brand take the 5% criticism for the 95% positivity? Can they take, that's the thresholds that people have to start to play under, because I don't think anybody's going to be happy with anything. Like, there's no 100% anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that we have to process that. And as we move into the future, right, I don't think that you can't think this way to be able to solve these problems. I think you get it. Right. So it's really cool that you like it. I mean, you've done a lot of cool things in your career. So for you to think it's a cool concept, and we've never spoken before. So for you to think it's a cool concept is what's been happening for us. So I hope that cool and unique turns into great execution, great business. And I hope that our team that really loves the concept and is buying into it the way they are, it's the best team I've ever worked with. I hope they all, garner great success by using it. Right. So I think that that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, I think it's, just my opinion is, I think the time has come for sort of nimble, agile-based marketing to move up funnel, right? It's existed for a long time at the bottom of the funnel. And at the top of the funnel has been more along the lines of, okay, it's Thanksgiving, I've got my next year's media plan locked down, right? And I did my upfronts, right? So
let's buy the Thursday football game, and let's buy a couple of turkey spots, and let's think about what's going to happen at Boston Market. But it's like, no, there's 1,000 other moments that are happening in every single one of those situations. And I think that brands want to take advantage of that. I really do. I think, but like you said, it's a road. It's going to be a road, but if you're not building something that is where the road's going, and you're building something just for what everyone's talking about right this second, you're going to get cannibalized when you have the companies out there. You know that with what you're building, right? Right? Like you always got to be a step ahead. So it's like, how can you do that unless you're thinking about more of the future and getting brands that want to come along that future and take less of a risk up front, because we are solving problems that are still today.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like it's a cool storm to do things that way.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining me. And I look forward to watching the platform evolve. And I'm sure that as more brands adopt it, you guys will sort of end up brainstorming with the brands and jointly coming up with even cooler ways to use the platform. So that's super exciting.